بسم الله الحمد لله الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نشهد أن محمد رسول الله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everybody. Your brother Ami Kawas, Executive Director of Oak Tree Institute. Very honored and privileged to be hosting you all for this webinar on engaging the next generation college and young professional volunteers, how to attract them, how to retain them, how to manage them. We broke a number, at least for us at Oak Tree, in the amount of people that were registering for this. We're very excited also about our collaboration with the Muslim American Society National, whose one of their main focuses is on youth, and they were a gracious partner in amplifying the message of this webinar. So we want to give them a shout out. Hassan, if you can go to the title page. If you are not familiar with Oak Tree Institute, we're a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to leadership and organizational development in the Muslim community. We were founded with the intention and the purpose of uplifting the capacity of our community, particularly from a leadership level and an institutional level, to be able to amplify a lot of the work. So we only work with nonprofits, we only work with organizations within the Muslim community, and we try to bring them the best practices and the latest in research and things that are data-driven to enhance their institutions, to enhance their leadership, to enhance their organizations. And so that's our purpose and our mission. You might have known, and I know many organizations that are on with us today that we've worked with. We work with organizations across the country, nationwide, large nonprofits, small nonprofits, Masjids, different institutions across different parts of the country. And we've been gracious enough to work with thousands of leaders and really support and understand the nuance of what it takes to be a community leader, a nonprofit leader, and how to serve at a high level. And we're trying to bring some of that expertise, if you will, to our organizations. And again, we're really privileged. I see a lot of familiar faces, and good to connect with everybody once again. That brings me, and I'm just emceeing tonight. I want to set up my dear brother Muhammad Hassan on his this really important topic, which is engaging the next generation, how to attract college and young professional volunteers. We're proud to partner with the Muslim American Society National, who has a deep focus and a deep interest in developing the next generation. And like I mentioned, they've been a gracious partner to be able to collaborate on this webinar. And really the intention and the focus today is one of the biggest pain points in the Muslim community. How do we not just attract youth to programs? I think many organizations are trying to do that, but what we're focused on today is how do we attract and retain them as volunteers and amplify them as leaders? And with that being said, I'll hand over the virtual mic to our presenter for today, Muhammad Hassan. For those that don't know Muhammad, he is one of the Oak Tree Institute instructors. He's been an instructor for us for many years. He specializes in many areas, including leadership psychology, coaching, communication. Currently, he's a consultant in a corporate setting, and he works on a lot of change management and organizational strategy. And he's been really developing a new program that we'll announce at the very end around this concept of volunteer engagement. So I'll have Muhammad speak to it. Inshallah ta'ala. Akhi Muhammad, the mic is all yours.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa la. Ya Rabb, subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Welcome to our webinar, Engaging the Next Generation. I want to dive right into it. And this evening, we're going to spend about an hour or so. I know we have folks from Central Time and your Maghrib time will come in. We're aware of that, inshallah. This is being recorded, so hope you can pray Maghrib and join us back. Nothing like attending something live. So if you're here, inshallah, I encourage you to stay on. If you step out from Maghrib and come back, that's no problem. I'd love to see all of you for the entirety of our hour here together, inshallah. We did that already. I wanted us to introduce ourselves. I know in the chat, if you haven't done so already, your name, organization you're from, your city, and really why are you passionate about college and young professional engagement? I mean, you're here. We'd love to know what brought you here to this webinar. So if you haven't done that already, feel free to chime in. I want to begin this evening by sharing a little bit about my story. It's something that I don't typically talk about, so I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable with you all this evening because I think it's important for me to talk about the journey that I have experienced, and maybe some of you, also have experienced a very similar journey. Here's me with my family here, but I want to really chat with you about my volunteer journey. And Rami mentioned, as you know, I'm in corporate strategy, organizational strategy work, in management consulting. And, before that, I started my career in psychotherapy. I was a clinical director of outpatient mental health and addiction clinic, which I eventually moved into corporate strategy. But I was, as I was preparing for this webinar, I thought a lot about my journey back when I was in college, almost 10, 15 years ago. And how I got started. I was involved in the MSA. I was MSA president, but I was not involved in my masjid. And I know we have a lot of folks who are from community centers and organizations, but I was involved in my masjid just like many other college students, but not involved in anything else. And so, I was thinking about my journey and how I ended up being involved at a masjid, being a director, and then later on at national level, different organizations, and eventually, find myself here in Oak Tree helping Muslim orgs throughout the country. I think about those individual mentors and murabbis who really played a key role in my life. And there's a lot of lesson to be taken from that. I was reminded of the story of Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, when he was a young man and he didn't study in the circles of the scholars. He grew up in a household, there were business folks. And one time he was passing by the house of Imam al-Sha'bi, and Imam Sha'bi told him, I see a lot of potential in you. Do you attend the gatherings of scholars? He said, no, I don't do that. He said, you should. I see a lot of intelligence in you. And to me, that changed the course, played a part and changed the course in the life of Abu Hanifa, who he became the great fuqaha. But what's more interesting than that to me is that how he paid it forward. That we find one of his two students, Imam Abu Yusuf, who used to attend Imam Abu Hanifa's circle of knowledge. And one time, as Abu Yusuf was sitting, his father came in and forcibly escorted him back to home. And he scolded his son. He said, Allah has made Abu Hanifa very content with his livelihood. He's wealthy. We're not like that. We have to work for our money. And you can't be sitting in these circles, taking away the time that you would be spending in earning some income for our house. And so Abu Yusuf didn't show up to the classes for a while. And Imam Hanifa noticed that. And he paid it forward. He gave Abu Yusuf some money and said, I will pay for your time. And as I was thinking about my journey in the Muslim community, of course, what led me to eventually be involved in the masjid were these mentors who paid it forward, were uncles in the masjid who, when I was young and running programs, I made so many mistakes. I said so many, I think back, so many immature things, but they allowed it. They nurtured it. They allowed me to grow in that process, right? And so I want to ask each of you that's in this call, there was a mentor in your life. There was people, there was institutions, masjids, or that was in your life that paid it forward for you. And so how can you be that for someone else? And that concern, I know each and every one of you, I'm sure you have here. That's why you're here in this call. And I'm reminded of the dialogue between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tells Ibrahim alayhi salam that وَإِذَا ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ فَأَتَمَّهُنَّ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tells Ibrahim alayhi salam that when he has passed all his tests and he went through his trials and challenges, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him, قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا, that I'm making you the imam over all people. And his first concern is قَالَ وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي قَالَ لَا يَنَالُ عَهْدِ الظَّالِمِينَ. That Ibrahim salam was concerned about his dhurriyyah, not even his ahl, not his family, but generations to come. And so, mashallah, each and every one of you here are concerned about that. That's something that is important to you. And so I want to begin tonight by talking about why engage college and young professionals. And if I was to consult a company and I would say, what is your best customers? And I'll use that term loosely. What is your best customers? And I would say for a Masjid, for organization, I'm telling you, your best customers is your college and young professionals. Why? We wrote it in our webinar marketing, emails that you saw, but we really mean it. And there were 4 points there, if you recall. First one said that having college and young professional, why prioritize them? Essentially 4 reasons. One, it helps you increase young leaders in your community. And we know that young leaders being part of your masjid, being part of your organization will help you bring fresh perspectives. They come with certain set of skills that you may not have, but they do something additional. They help you increase accountability and transparency, because this generation of Gen Zs and millennials, they demand more when it comes to accountability and transparency. And so when you have them, they will keep you in your toes for good, for a good thing. And of course, studies shows that workplace teams that have multi-generational members are more productive and perform better. So we know that from studies. But having beyond just maybe some masjid, mashallah, is changing all over the country. But when I was growing up, a lot of masjids were heavily male dominated, and of course brothers a little bit older. And so oftentimes they'll be stuck in a norm or a way of doing things. But when you introduce another element, a younger leader or a sister leader, oftentimes the dynamic changes for the good. They can't no longer sit and kind of be involved in the drama as they used to be, just out of sheer embarrassment even, right? So even anecdotally, I think of how it has a huge impact. But so number one, in the young leaders that are in your organization will bring those accountability, will bring those dynamic benefits. And number two, obviously we all know this, that when you have more younger college and young professional volunteers or leaders in your organization, in your masjid, inshallah, you will attract more youth in your programs. This seminar, this webinar here rather, we're not discussing how to bring more youth into our programs. That's a separate discussion. But even talking about college and young professional volunteers, they are actually a key way of bringing youth into your programs. And they also serve as a role model, right? When they see this young professionals, hijabi sister making announcements in your programs, they're already serving as, without even speaking, serving as a role model for the youth that are coming into Masjid. So that's number two, why it's so critical. Number three, as to why I'm pitching tonight that college and young professional volunteers are your best customers, because they are a new pool of young donors. And there is, studies on them are very, very inspiring. Number one, they're giving more and more. Annually about 1,323, which is a 40% increase on their annual giving. And they really believe in you when they give you. And I mean this with all respect. Baby boomers give out of a sense of duty. They could give out of a sense of mission, of course. But a lot of time it's, there is a sense of duty that is number one motivator. But for a lot of the Gen Zs and millennials, when they give to an organization, they're giving because they feel it's a way of them rolling up their sleeves and creating a change in the world. And why is that a good thing? You want that kind of people to be giving in your organization. When they give, they really believe in you and they will really propel your mission forward. So that's beautiful. That's a good thing. And they also get others involved. So they not only volunteer their time. When you get more young college young professionals, they will amplify that. There are money funds being raised in a WhatsApp group that are more than at a fundraiser. A random masjid that I won't name at a particular city is raising money from all over the country, in unique ways because of crowdfunding. And so when you have college young professionals, they amplify your message. And finally, the fourth reason why college young professional volunteers are your best customers are because they are the lasting legacy of your organization. Gen Zs and millennials are reshaping the landscape of Muslim American organizations, just like they have done with companies. Companies that were very relevant yesterday are no longer relevant today because they're not serving what Gen Zs and millennials prioritize. And so if our messages and organizations are not prioritizing the same thing they're prioritizing, our organization also at risk of becoming irrelevant, like the many companies who have become irrelevant. And so as we have engaged college young professional volunteers, it ensures the next generation continues, right? We all know a story of a masjid that was initially a church that became a nightclub, then became a masjid. And we feel good telling that story, but it often scares me. What keeps me up at night sometimes is, what happens afterwards. It was great. It was a church, then it was a nightclub, then it was a masjid. But what's next, right? Are we able to maintain that masjid in the next 50 years? And so I know that probably keeps you up, a lot of you here up at night, and that's why you're here. College and young professionals are a priority in our organizational community. So to sum it all up, they increase young leaders, they engage more youth in your programs, attract new pool of young donors, and you secure the lasting legacy of your organization. All right, so now that we covered the why, I want to cover the who. So who are these college and young professionals? I want to go one step deeper. I know a lot of you here may have worked with a lot of college and young professionals. You've been in organizations and community for a long time, so you have some understanding. But I want to reset the tone a bit and speak really to the characteristics that makes these two generations are very unique. So let's start with talking about the millennials and Gen Zs. Let me start with the millennials. The millennials, they are born in anywhere between the 1980s and 2000s. And they are, if you look at this chart here, something quick to look at, they're quite optimistic and risk takers, right? If you have millennials in your organization, they want more, promotion, that they're looking to move forward. Gen Zs are uniquely interesting. They're born born after 1995. Anyone who was born after 95, they're just entering the workforce, whereas the millennials, they are now poised to become the majority in the workforce. Gen Z is just entering workforce. They're probably, the college student or younger. They're more cautious. They grew up in a very racially diverse and a lot of non-traditional things around them that kind of makes up their mindset about the world. And so, it's very interesting. Millennials, so if you have young professionals, they're into investing in teamwork and collaboration, versus the college student they may have as a volunteer. Actually, they value independence and improving their personal skills. Very different. They're very much similar in the way they think about work arrangements and work schedules. And we'll talk more about that as we talk about what that means for a message, what that means for an organization. But it's good to kind of get a roundabout picture of what these two generations are. Now, to give you even more at a kind of perspective, a comparative perspective, I want you to, I know there's a lot here on this chart, and I'm not going to, read to you from each of the places of the chart, but something to think about, that the baby boomers, they cared about their job security. Interestingly, Generation Z also cares about their security and stability, but not necessarily their job security. Their demands are less. They're happy with small things. They need their phone, and unlike the millennials, the Generation Y, they want freedom and flexibility, and they want to move up the ladder, right? Interestingly, millennials, look at these last two columns, Generation Y, Generation Z. Those are two columns we're talking about. Millennials, like myself, into tablets and smartphones. Generation Z are now looking into other forms of augmented technology, right? We're into texting and social media, and they're into handheld devices and other communication. Interestingly to me is that the millennials, we like to be text messaging and online and mobile. Gen Zs, interestingly, prefer FaceTime, whether it be just FaceTime on Apple, but also just you'll see them get on a phone video call very quickly, whether it be in a game environment or just talking to their friends. It's something that they do. Millennials, we like to face-to-face conversation, right? And those of who are Generation X, born between 1960 and 1980, they prefer FaceTime, if only their time. They're all about work-life balance, right? They probably have a few kids. They're almost in their 45s and the 50s. But millennials like face-to-face. But Gen Zs, they like to solution things digitally. It would not be totally out of place to say they would first go check ChatGPT for an answer, and before do their research before anything else. So just a few things to kind of keep in mind, and you could dig in deeper and get a lot more perspective on how their life was shaped. The millennials, our lives are shaped by the 9/11, Google Earth and social media, versus a Generation Z. They grew up after the economic downturn. They're thinking about energy crisis, cloud computing. That sort of reshapes their world. And it's very important to understand when we want to engage college young professionals in our organization, Masjid, to understand what the world they're living in. And before I get to the poll question, I want to just make this bring this a lot more home for you, right? Think about a college or a young professional. Think about someone who just graduated, about to graduate. The job market isn't great, right? They want to get married, but might not be ready. Some maybe detest marriage. Some are bidding their time until they get a master's, right? They are socially expected to be happy and fun. There's a family pressure of them getting a job or getting married. And imagine now, do you add to that stress as a Masjid, youth director or managing them as a volunteer, right? What are those things that are top of mind for them, right? You think about someone who's engaged in the MSA, but not at your Masjid. Why, right? He's a college student, goes on campus. Anytime he comes to the Masjid or she comes to the Masjid is, maybe at an event or a Jummah or Ramadan time, doesn't like the way things are handled at the Masjid or in the community center, and not really interested. MSA feels at home, feels that they could do something short term and engaged. Or think about someone who's a young professional and they're involved in their professional, spaces, but not at a Masjid or not at a Muslim organization. Why? You ask themselves. They might feel that the projects that a Masjid has, the project that the organization has, is not relevant to the causes that I care about, right? And so, essentially, what I'm trying to tell you here in this section is really about putting ourselves in the shoes of the college and young professionals, looking at the world, the way they're looking at the world, and then deciding how are we setting them up for success? How are we set up as a Masjid, as an organization, to be able to attract them, to be able to retain them, to be able to engage them, to be able to manage them, right? I often do this when we do, sometimes we advise Masjids and some of our trainings as well. We do this human-centered design discussion, right? Companies, you think about an airport, they would do analysis on how does the airport experience changes going through the airport as a mom with a baby stroller, right? Walking through the airport. Your perspective changes, where there's accessibility ramp and where there's this little space to nurse, like those things, it starts to become something you're concerned about. I always give the story of when my wife and I and another couple, we went to a Masjid, and the brother and I, we came out of the Masjid feeling all refreshed because we were just walking all day. And my wife and her friend came out just not happy, because the experience they had going into that Masjid, to the sister spaces, was very different. And that's for a brothers versus sister. But think about even for a college or a young professional, what is the experience they're getting when they come to the Masjid, right? And is it set up for them, right? How are they viewing all the ways you make announcements, all the ways you say things, how you present your financials, how you fundraise? They're paying attention, right? And so think about the human journey of the college young professionals that are coming into your spaces. So with that, I want to go right into the poll. Rami, we have the poll set up. Is that something we're good to go?
Yep, I got it up. You want me to launch it?
No, I got it. I'll go ahead and launch it. So Bismillah, I want you to take it's just 4 questions. I would just love for us to think about our organizations and spaces that we're involved in, and how well are we set up to attract, to engage, to manage, and to empower college and young professional volunteers. So let's take a look. You should see the poll pop up, and I would love to get some responses. Is the poll showing up, Rami?
Yeah, Hassan, it's showing up. Do you want to read the questions out loud, maybe, or?
Okay, yeah. I mean, I would love for folks to participate. We have 60 plus on, alhamdulillah. So the first question asks, what are the biggest challenges you're currently facing in recruiting college young professional volunteers? So the first one is recruiting. And we're getting some responses now. And the second question asks around what are the biggest challenges you're facing in engaging? And the way I have separated this is into 4 sections. And our next part of our webinar here is going to go into these 4 sections that are the solution, that are the areas of focus. The first area is recruiting, meaning finding college and professional volunteer. Where do you find them? Number 2 is like, okay, we found them, or they're in my volunteer list. How do we engage them? How do we retain them, right? And the third one is, okay, we have them engaged, they're running a project or part of a team. How do we manage these young college and young professionals? And the last one is, okay, they are been engaged, they're running a project. How do we take them to the next level? So hopefully set them up to become, young leaders and board members and really play a lot more active role, take ownership. All right, can we see the votes, the results as well?
Yeah, whenever you click on end poll, Hassan, that will give the results. But I think maybe you want to give just another maybe 30 seconds to a minute for everybody to.
Yeah, absolutely. Meanwhile,
Yeah, I think there's 30 people who answered the question so far. So Hassan, I think give it a little bit time for people to finish up answering.
Yeah. Another 10 seconds to wrap it up, inshallah.
Hassan, are you looking at the chat?
Yeah. Can we have each question up and you can elaborate on each of them? Ben understanding, sure. And this is not meant to be an exhaustive analysis or exhaustive assessment. Obviously, and how long is the webinar? Inshallah, we plan to go on till 10:15, inshallah. Or even a little earlier, but no more than 10:15, inshallah. This is an hour or so webinar. Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on the poll, but we'll do a small debrief. We are happy at Oaktree to get on a call with you and assess your organization on these 4 metrics, and this is exactly where those are from. But the first one really speaks to what a challenge you're having in recruiting, meaning finding college young professional volunteers, right? When I say lack of awareness or visibility, is it that the college young professional doesn't know that you have opportunities at your masjid, right? Or difficulty capturing their interest? It's more about that they know about you, but they're not really interested in the things you have to offer and the opportunities that you have for volunteering at your masjid. And when it comes to channels, it could be that we're getting a little bit deeper here, like how exactly are you reaching out and the ways you're reaching out. By channels, it can be from social media, it can be your collaboration with the MSA, your collaboration with local organization, job fairs, all sorts of ways, and I'll talk more about that, different best practices in being able to recruit and find the college young professionals. So that's really what this speaks to. Let's end the poll and let's see the results, and I'm happy to say 1 or 2 lines on the results. And if anyone has any other insights, feel free to put it in the chat, inshallah. So I will end the poll now. All right, so I am sharing the results, I believe. So most of you said here that your biggest challenge, and we have about 46% difficulty capturing their interest and motivating. So and this really speaks to and we'll address that. Why is it that they're not getting interested in the offers that you have for you to volunteer? And I'll talk more about that in the next section. What are the biggest challenges you're currently facing in engaging? So you have some list of volunteers. They have probably, did one thing with you at a meal packing, but since then has been silent. Or they were very interested, joined your committee, and not has been engaging, have not been engaging. Maintain the long-term commitment. Yes, I see that's the biggest one. And this communication gap within generation that did come up. For sense of belonging, that's very interesting, but I see that the highest one is that the long-term commitment, and that seems to be the pain point for a lot of organizational messages that we work with. What are the biggest challenges you're facing in managing? So you have some dedicated college and young professional volunteers, but you always run into trouble in how you manage them. So the biggest vote we have at 51% is inadequate volunteer management system. Yeah, and I'll talk more about this, that Gen Zs and millennials, if they find that your organization is cumbersome, it's difficult to even get a payment back for a receipt, they will drop it because they don't want to be involved. They have a lot of high expectation, and we have to work with them, and because they get such a personalized experience from all the brands that they interact with on a daily basis, they almost expect that from Masjids. And is that wrong or right? That's a different discussion. But we have to meet them where they're at, right? And then help them grow and help them expand their mindset. But it begins by meeting them where they're at. And we talk a lot about that. I'll tell you more about our service and offer that we have in helping organizations improve their volunteer management system, not from the technology side, but also from the process side of things. Your operating model, your governance was very important. Day-to-day operations. And lastly, when it comes to empowering, taking them to the next level, we have 49% vote on offering growth and development opportunities. Yeah, absolutely. Gen Zs and millennials want to see that they are not just giving back, but this is a place that they're also growing in some way. And we'll talk a little more about that for sure, inshallah. If there's any more thoughts that anyone has on the poll, feel free to share on the chat. I will take a look. I don't have anything yet. But yeah, with that, in that case, I will inshallah continue. Anything in the chat? Let me take a look. Any questions, any thoughts, any insights as we get into the meat and potato, which is the 4 areas that we just mentioned, right? Recruitment, engagement, management, and empowerment. Okay. All right. So I will move forward. So we talked about the challenges. Let's get into the 4 key areas. 4 key areas. Let's begin with recruitment. I said there were 4: recruitment, engagement, management, empowerment. Those are the 4 areas. But so let's begin with recruitment, inshallah. So when we talk about recruitment, and you mentioned the pain point of having projects that are interesting, piquing their interest. Really, number one, it's about appealing projects and roles. So a Gen Z and a millennial may not be interested in joining your regular volunteer meeting cadence or just a volunteer group with no specific action, just like general pool of volunteers, right? Just show up to a volunteer orientation. That may not be as of interest, but someone saying, look, that we want to start a basketball league and we want you to lead it. That's a very specific time-bound commitment. And Gen Zs and millennials, want those very concise projects that are appealing to them. And yet you have to honor that as well. It can be that you start a recycling program, and when the volunteer leaves, you turn that into a regular garbage bag. And then they see how you value their initiative, right? You really have to mean when you start these exciting initiatives and projects, and you have to package your volunteer work. What I mean by that, it's not really shuffling your work; it's just packaging. And I say this, and you might say, you know what? No, they should be doing it for the sake of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. They should do it for for the love of the akhir, for Jannah. That is true. But immediately they care about their resume, they care about their skill development. And so, how are you packaging your volunteer opportunity in a way that sounds not only sounds, but it is a project and it is a role that's very specific. So number one is appealing projects and roles. Number two, it has to be youth-centric culture, has to be the hallmark of your organization. And so it's about what is the perception of your masjid, of your organization to the college and young professionals. And it also even begins at the social media. When they read your post, when they see the things that you're putting out, how does it feel? How does the virtual space feel? Does it feel like it's very welcoming, right? And in building a youth-centric culture means you have to build trust. Millennials and Gen Zs are heavily influenced by their peers, and in all studies, they lack trust in traditional institutions. Why is that the case? We can delve into the social psychology of it, but they do. And by far, millions of Gen Zs don't trust traditional institutions. And so we have to earn their trust. And part of that is about your transparency and authenticity. So when the college or young professional attends your Jummah and they observe how you go about your funding, they observe how you go about talking about your expenses, they want to see that you are accountable and have transparency. That will give them the trust in saying, I want to be involved with this masjid, I want to be involved with this organization. And even key than that, part of youth-centric culture is having a vocal, youth-friendly leader. Now, that can be a board member, that can be an imam, that can be a director, someone that's very visible in your masjid, in your organization, and is out there talking about, wanting to work with college and young professionals, showing that he or she has an open arm, and that will go far in you being able to recruit college and young professionals. And lastly, effective outreach and messaging. And we all know, finding customers where they're at, right? And I mean that in a little funny way. But think about Travis Scott, the rapper who holds a concert, a while back in the game Fortnite, because he knew his customers were in the game world, in the Fortnite. So he held the concert not at a live real world location, but inside a virtual world. And I also often joke around when I go to different masjids and they talk about, we're trying to build a third space, a cafe. And I said, those are great. Maybe it's time to build a fourth space, in the virtual world. So leveraging, where are the college young professionals? I'm not going to answer that question in an exhaustive manner tonight, but I'm telling you to think about it that way. Where are they, and are we reaching them where they're at, right? How do we collaborate with the local cafe that's Muslim owned, where youth are at? Can the masjid do a collaboration event, right? Can we hold a speaker event, a book reading event at that cafe, right? So being able to have leveraging the channels that we have, and then compelling marketing. Young professionals want that one-on-one relationship, an organic one-on-one marketing, right? Obviously showcasing the current youth leaders that you do have in your organization, right? And them obviously reaching out to the other young professionals would go a far way. And then utilizing effective channels. What I mean by effective channels is going beyond just sending out a message or putting out a post. It's about thinking of how can we collaborate, right? I have seen great ways that and I know Mass is a partner here with us this evening, and I've seen some Mass centers that partner with YM or MIST and others to be able to create a space where we have more college and young professionals come in. The ways that a relief organization, certain relief organization has been able to collaborate with MSAs to create a charity events. Those are examples of how to go beyond, and that's just the start. And that's, I'm talking about stuff that are already happening. Think even more one step ahead, right? Think about how you can go even one more step creatively in utilizing and leveraging the channels. And so where do I find college and young professional volunteers? It's about really creating those projects and roles that are specific. It's about already having a youth-centric culture and leveraging, I would say, quote unquote, non-traditional channels in hosting your spaces. And that's all about recruitment. Let's move on to our second area. Now, we said there are 4 areas.
Hassan,
Second area
there's-
is on engagement. Yes, Joel.
Yeah, there's some comments in the chat. I just wanted to point you to that.
Sure. Do we want to take questions and comments toward the end, or do you want to do it in between sections?
It's up to you, inshallah.
Okay. I'm happy to just shed quick lights. Take some quick in just a few minutes here. So I'm looking at the comments. There's some larger comments, so it will take too much time for me to review it now. Rami, feel free to summarize and ask if either of you do that. But let me do
So
the end. Some of
we
them are
can take,
lengthy.
yeah, so Hassan, we can do it at the end, inshallah.
Yeah, some of them are a bit lengthy. Let's keep note. We don't want to lose out on some amazing questions and some really good insights that are coming here. Mashallah, we have a lot of leaders here attending, and it's not just me, Rami, and the Oak Tree Institute here. I think there's a lot to be learned from you all. And actually, one of the things that at Oak Tree we're working on is over the last 5 years, more than that, 75 years, we've been able to work with hundreds of masajids. Let's just stick to masajid, hundreds of masajids. And we have seen masjids that have done some amazing stuff. And we have seen some masjid that has some challenges. And so one of the things we want to do is pull together some of the best practices that we saw over the last few years and let other masjid benefit from each other. And so definitely there are good insights even from this group here. I'm sure you have done things that has worked for you, and we'd love to put in the chat. I'm sure the other masjid and other organizations here will benefit from your insights, inshallah. So let's move on to engagement. So you have some volunteers, some college and young professionals. How do you engage them so that they're just not a one-time show, but you actually retain them? Here, there's also 3 strategy and tactics here. Number 1 is understand their passion and motivation. Understand their passion and motivation. So what's amazing is that we have a very, very lucrative opportunity here. Study shows that millennials and Gen Zs, they are increasingly seeking volunteer opportunities. In fact, 70% prefer to donate their time rather than money. And obviously, they may have less money than Generation X as they're just starting up in their careers. But regardless, because of the percentage, they do want to volunteer their time even more than money. So masjids have a huge opportunity, nonprofits have a huge opportunity to capitalize on this, right? Capitalize on the inclination of the millennials, Gen Zs to seek volunteer opportunities that are aligned with their values. So how am I responding for a masjid here, all the board members and directors and imams here? How am I responding to the current events and pulling together an initiative that speaks to the current event? If a college young professional sees that your masjid, your organization is not responding to immediate needs, something happens very quickly, you pull together a meal packing event, you will attract more college young professionals that because that is top of mind for them, right? In this very much buzz and trend world, it matters. And it's also about personalization, right? If you want to engage the volunteers that signed up in your list, maybe Ramadan time, did one thing with you, and you're trying to engage them more, you have to have one-on-one conversations, especially millennials. You want to have one-on-one conversations. Different people are different stages in their life, and you have to speak to them at that stage. If getting married is top of mind for them, you're speaking to them, in that language, in that worries that they have about the job and changing job. That's going to speak to them, right? So personalizing the message, one-on-one, what is your strength? It's not just join our big, long volunteer list, or become our, committee member. Really, what is your strength? And how can I give you a role that speaks to your strength in a very personalized way, right? You care about, civic engagement. Let me get you involved in this particular committee that does only that. And some of your volunteers will be seasonal. And we have to accept that. And we're very used to having people who are involved in the masjid that dedicate their lives for months and years. And that is not the case for Gen Z and millennials. You have to accept that they will be project-based. You have to accept that there will be time bound. You have to accept that there will be seasonal, and that is okay. And they will come back and engage with you in other ways, right? And we can teach them. And I want to talk about the last section, empowerment. We can talk about how to get them to have accountability, how to get them to have ownership, so that they do commit long term. But you have to start off by making sure to personalize it, right? And then providing adequate support. When you set them up, they're already, as is, young professionals and college students are dealing with a lot of uncertainties in their lives. Things are not stable for them. And as you saw, Gen Z's constancy is actually a big motivator factor, which is very, very interesting, right? They witness the world of economic downturn of 2010. They see now the COVID. And so stability is quite important. So you need to provide that support system. They shouldn't have to feel like they have to fight to get, a receipt paid or get something through, and help them balance their workload, right? You're not going to get millennial Gen Z volunteering in a way that they will sacrifice their family and their life and their career for your masjid. We have had, mashallah, amazing uncles and aunties who did that, and our elders who have done that. And inshallah, someday, some of these Gen Zs and millennials maybe will be at that level. But they're just not going to do that. And as soon as you burn them out, they will leave your organization, right? And so do less. If you have less people, do less. Having ambitious agenda is good, but you only want to deliver on things that are optimum, right? It's great that you feel this pressure. This mission is doing this. This organization is doing that program. Oh, we're behind. But burning out your people along the way to do it it's not going to get you too far, right? And so providing the adequate support, and then cultivating a culture of care and recognition, right? Cultivating care and recognition. When you have college young professional volunteers, they want to see that you are thoughtful in your communication with them, right? That they can bring their whole self to their work in the masjid. What I mean by bring their whole self, right? I have so many things that are taking out my time. Why should I take time and give it to the masjid, right? That's the question they're asking. And so them being able to bring their whole self is that important, right? If you're going to have college young professionals, helping them think about, self-care, it becomes, an important topic. Maybe, for other volunteers that you didn't have to address that. That was something, you come here and do for sake of Allah. But no, when you have college young professional, you have to prioritize that most, right? Of course, and we know this, and that this is true of engaging any volunteer, any age bracket, obviously appreciating them, an exclusive event, an exclusive dinner, an exclusive trip, something to make them feel recognized. And of course, recognition goes a long way of social media recognitions, and recognizing what they're good at. There's something very, very important. Don't be another critique in their lives. As a college and young professional, they're already hearing a lot from their parents, from their family, from the world. They feel a lot of pressure, right? And you become another source of critique. Why would I want to stay in that space, right? I don't have to, family, career, a job, different thing, manager, but I don't need to take it here as well, right? And so realizing how can we speak to each individual, like the way Imam Sha'abi spoke to Imam Abu Hanifa and said, young man, I see a lot of intelligence in you, right? And so being able to give them recognition and appreciation. So that's far as engagement. We have 2 more left. Now that you have recruited and have some volunteers, you have engaged them, they are, you're retaining them. How do you manage them? Now that they're in your project, they're running things for you, how do you manage them? There are 3 things. Clear expectation, and you want to also make sure to foster collaboration, and you want to simplify and streamline the process. 3 things. So when it comes to clear expectation, you need to be transparent about the rules and how it's outlined. And you need to have consistency in how you follow up. You can't expect college and young professionals for them to make your organization, your masjid, the #1 and the most important thing in their lives. So often, I have masjid board members and directors and imams, they call and say, okay, how do I make them more accountable? How do I make them more, responsible? And we can talk about that. We can chat about that. But honestly, you as someone that's managing a college young professionals, you need to be on top of that. It's not a college young professional job to make your masjid the most important thing in their lives. There are different levels of volunteership and volunteering, right? You need to get them in a routine. You need to have a consistent one-on-one. It's so critical if you're working with college young professionals as a volunteer, if you're managing them in your masjid and organization, to set up a consistent one-on-one time with them, whether it be monthly, weekly, and they can expect it and it's consistent, and you are checking in on a daily basis about their lives, about their getting marriage process, about their new job situation, about their college exam or their medical school exam, and you're following up on the projects. They want to see that you have that personal relationship, that one-on-one relationship. And so clear expectations and having that consistency. And you want to foster collaboration, right? Foster collaboration. So you want to build a supportive environment, and that becomes, oftentimes Gen Zs and millennials, they need some upskilling. They need to learn some soft skills. And you can be that venue where you can host session on conflict resolution and give them a space where they feel like they're growing, right? And even fostering a culture of collaboration. Like it or not, Gen Zs and millennials are quite idealistic. So when they see you talk about other organizations in a way that's not collaborative, that will turn them off. And I don't want to go into too much detail, but we know, and those of you who run masjids here, you know how we talk about our brand, right? And it's true, we should focus on our own house. That is true. But when they see that you're more focused on getting more people to your event versus, and it's like a competition between you and the other masjid, as a competition between you and the other organization. You look at fellow Muslim organization as a competitor in an unhealthy way, not competition towards Allah, but more of they will pick that up, and that will affect the way and impact the way they look at your culture and look at your organization, and that will turn them off, right? They're quite idealistic. There are politics. There are these are normal things when it happens when you in an organization, but being able to have that positive, optimistic, collaborative mindset will go a long way in managing your college and young professionals. And then, of course, streamlining and simplifying your process. And someone brought that up, and I know in the poll that came up quite a bit. Yeah, absolutely. Gen Zs and millennials, yes, you're right. Very high expectation. They do have very high expectation. And we can work on that. We can help them have a bigger, broader mindset and growth mindset. That is true. But we have to meet them where they're at. And meet them where they're at is if your house is a mess, the way you run your organization and the way you operate your programs and projects is a mess, don't expect young professionals to join your team. They're just not going to, right? They demand more from organizations. Minimize redundancies, right? Interestingly, studies show that 54% of young donors will have less trust in a nonprofit if the donation process isn't simple. Can you believe that? Like, just because your donation button is kind of complicated, they will not donate to you. And not only donate to you, they will lose all trust in your organization, right? And so you want to make sure the process is simple for them. When you manage young professionals and college volunteers, make sure there's one person that's working with them and not 3 different board members that are giving them instructions, because this is our volunteer and she can do this and she can do that, and everyone else is texting them what to do. And because clearly college young professionals have a lot of free time on their hand, so let me double the work, right? And 10 people are doing that to them, you will burn them out, right? And so minimizing, and making your process efficient. And then, of course, user-friendly volunteer management system. And we can talk about technologies to leverage and project management software leverage, and how you have your communication portals. And I know for some small masjids here and small organizations here, it is expensive and hard, and you're just 3, 4, 5 man-woman show. And I get that, but at least you can make your process more streamlined, even if you cannot leverage technology in that way. So that is all about management. And last but not least, empowerment. And this is the final section of us being able to attract and engage young college and young professionals. And continue to put your thoughts on the chat, your insights in the chat, things that have worked for you at your masjid. We'd love to hear that as well. And when we go to the Q&A session, inshallah. So the final section, empowerment. How do we not only recruit them, not only retain and engage them, not only manage them in our project, but finally, how do we take them to the next level, right? How do we empower them for them to become, inshallah, the next leaders of our masjid and organization, to become the next board members of our masjid and organization, not just a token member. And a lot of masjids and a lot of have 1 or 2 token sisters, 1 or 2 token young professionals. And let me tell you, they don't feel like they have any voice. Clearly they don't, because their donation power is not as strong, right? So this young professional can only donate 8,000. Another board member who's a dentist, and no knock on dentists, or a doctor, and they donate 20, 30, 40,000. Their voice is a lot louder in the board. And so this young professional almost feels useless. Like, I'm just a token college young professional person here, right? And every time there's a topic about a youth, all the elders turn around and look at him or her. That does no one any good. You're not putting them in a position of power, right? This is just a lip service at that point. And so, mashallah, this is not the case for some organizations. I'm sure not the case for organizations here in this call. Mashallah, we have worked with many organizations in the country that, mashallah, does amazing job. So we'd love to learn from you. What has worked for you? I would love to hear that as well. So when it comes to empowering, essentially 3 things. One is you want to foster ownership and leadership. You want to mentor, and you want to build capacity. When it comes to fostering ownership, it's really about encouraging that ownership, right? And that begins by you avoiding micromanagement. You have to allow them the ability to make mistakes. There were murabbis and board members and uncles in the community when I was involved that took risk on me, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, that allowed me to make mistakes. And I think back, I made plenty of mistakes. But if they had shut me down, if they had sidelined me at that time, I would not have the opportunity to grow. And so taking their advice seriously, like obviously, we talked about Ibrahim at the very beginning, and I remember the incident when he saw the inspiration from Allah in his dream about sacrificing his son, and he went to his son, who was perhaps just reached his puberty, very young. What do you think? Taking his opinion, even though he doesn't have to, he's a prophet of God, right? That's showing that level of ownership. And so avoid micromanagement and giving that ownership, and allow them to make mistakes within a safe zone and scope. And now and beyond that, when you have done that, is to provide them that mentorship. And it's so important. Mentorship and growth opportunities. If one thing that I want to emphasize tonight is this section here, is this point here. Invest in their growth. If you have network in your field, that be in IT and medical or engineering, help them get a better job. Help them connect with their network. Invest in their growth. See that the skill that they need to learn. Invest money on them. Imam Abu Hanifa invested in Abu Yusuf financially. Invest in the youth. Yes, they have their parents, but you as a masjid, you as an organization, when you're investing in that, of course, some may want investment for their spiritual growth, whether it be taking Islamic institutions, but beyond that, even for their career, invest in things that they care about, right? Financially supporting that tangible benefit that they can feel from the organization. Even a small discount will go a long way, right? And then create those growth pathways for them, right? How to go from volunteer to a team lead, create that structure for them, and get them that leadership trust. I will challenge you to do an experiment. Think about all the major decisions that you have to make at your masjid in the next 3-4 months. And I'm talking masjid organization here. And ask your youngest volunteers to spend spend some time and give their thoughts on how the organization should move forward. You'd be surprised at the creativity and fresh perspective that a college and a young professional will bring versus how you think you've been stuck in the field of decisions that you have to make for a masjid, right? And so mentorship and growth opportunities are a key. And finally here, build capacity. So I did mention at the top of the hour that they want projects, they want a specific role. And how do you help them go from that to a long-term commitment is to help them build team around them, right? Encourage them to form teams, provide them, other youth volunteers that can support and help them grow their communities. and promote their creativity and innovation, things that they want, the way they want to problem solve, and the way they want to tackle issues. And you will see that even if it is not the best decision, if it's not the best way forward, you having had trust in them, that will be a bigger investment than having made a correct decision around what time of the day the event should be on. Right? The fact that you trust them on it is way more important for your long term of your organization. And so being able to empower them. So you might be asking, what now? And of course, inshallah, we'll have a Q&A session, but I want to leave you with some few next steps, if you will. And the next steps that I would say for you all of us here, is to conduct some little self-assessment of what exactly are we doing now. And at Oaktree, we're happy to set up a call and kind of assess with you, with your team, with your board, inshallah, as well, like we have done for many organizations. But really to assess and see what are your strengths right now, the things that are working, what are things that are not working, right? A lot of great strategies here that I have went through in the last hour, right? Last 45 minutes. And I know it might be overwhelming for some. Wow, like these are all great ideas, but like it's a lot. You're right, it's a lot. And so being able to prioritize and pick one or two things to pilot, right? And then schedule this feedback session, right? Taking those feedback, setting up those surveys where after Jummah, you can survey your young professional colleagues that will come for Jummah and say, hey, here's a QR code, here's a little link. Before you head out, I would love to get some, some feedback around what we can do better to attract you to get involved here in the Masjid, right? And try out a pilot program. And with that note, as we head into Q&A, I want to just talk a little about, alhamdulillah, as Rar mentioned at the beginning, we have a lot of different services and solutions for Muslim organizations at different levels, from masjids to relief organizations and others. But I just want to give you a quick, just a sneak peek preview on another new offering, another new workshop that we are putting together, and that we have, and it's called Building Community Inside Out. Building community inside out. And this whole premise of this is that, oftentimes we think about, how do we build communities, right? And we think about things that need to happen on the outside, right? We need to get more, congregants. We need to get more funding. We need to get more. And what I'm proposing here is to build a community inside out. Oftentimes it's about the things that need to happen internally that will set you up correctly. So it's a brand new workshop for Masjid and nonprofit board members, volunteers. We have, as you know, many other offerings here, but with this one, I want to give you just a quick backdrop of what this is. Essentially, it's a workshop that has 5 modules. It's interactive training. Ideally, it's a day, 2-day workshop, but we can offer at different formats. If there's only one module that you want to go through with your team and your board, we can do that. If we want to have a condensed version that focuses on a few highlights, we could do that. And we can assess your organization first to see which areas you're really struggling with, and kind of help you with that. And you can definitely get in touch with us here. But just to tell you a little bit about these 5 pillars, these are 5 pillars that I personally feel are key to having a thriving community, whether it be Masjid or organization, and building that community inside out. The first pillar talks about programming. So the programs that you offer, the services that you offer, are they people first? What I mean by that is, I talked about human-centered design and how, the people that we serve, do we really understand their journey, right? What does it feel like for a single mother to come to a masjid? What does it feel like for a refugee to walk into a masjid? What does it feel like for a college, young brother to walk into a masjid? Different people have different experiences as they walk into a masjid. When they listen to your khutbah, they're hearing different things because they're attuned to different things. And so when we design our programs, are we designing programs with people in mind, right? And so that's the first section that we cover a lot about that, and really talk about programming and how we design our programs. The second section talk about community movement acceleration. So this is really about Islamic institutions and their PR, branding, and messaging. We talk a little bit about the science of an art of movement, right? We talk about how do you get your space in the masjid to be this, to inspire and create this catalyst of congregants and people thriving and coming into masjid, regardless of the size of a masjid, how big your basketball court is, and whether or not you have a cafe at your masjid. you can make it feel like a community and a movement, and there are ways of science and tactics and strategies that we have seen other masjids across the last 5-7 years do it, and we'd love to teach you that. And then the other part is volunteers, and this is what I was talking about today a little bit on talent optimization. So people that we have, right? How do we develop them? How do we recruit them? And I'm going to especially focus more on Gen Z and millennials, how to find, onboard, train, manage, and we talk a lot about things around organizational culture, team excellence, and the likes. The other two pillars are operations and donation. So the operations really, someone talked about it here, making the process efficient. So we really take a step back. A lot of our masjids are run in an ad hoc way, and thinking about how do we, and it's not just about, there's a big trend about let's incorporate the corporate strategy and tactics. I'm in corporate, and I'm telling you, not everything translates one-on-one to a nonprofit, and especially not a Muslim nonprofit, right? It's nice to see that, but there are things we can leverage, but there are things that are ingrained even in our own sunnah and in the Quran and sunnah as well, and in our own tradition, that I think we need to bring back in the way we operate our masjids and our organization. So we talk a lot about governance and structure, we talk about process, system, facilities, and so forth. I talk a little bit about project management and things like that. And finally, donation. We talk about financial agility. This is not a section on how to get more money necessarily, although we do have that oak tree. Nadine does a great job with that. You can talk to Jawad and learn more about our offering there. But in this section here, we really want to cover what I call the donor engagement, donor journey. So thinking about the people that donate to our masjids, how do we figure out and how do we engage them? How do we steward them? How do we create a culture where people feel good about putting in money? How do we get creative about sources of our donations, and how we make it transparent and accountable, right? And how to make it sustainable? Thinking about leveraging, and we're going beyond just trusts, endowments and so forth. Going beyond that, inshallah. So that is building community inside out. With that, we'll go into Q&A. I think Rami has a few quick things you might want to add on this note, and then we could get into Q&A, inshallah.
You want to get, I'm sorry, Hazard, did you want to get into Q&A, or you wanted to have me talk a little bit about Oak Tree Institute?
We did talk about in the beginning, but if you want to add anything to I mentioned regarding any other offering, feel free.
Yeah,
no. Folks have about us and our organization, and a lot of we are fairly familiar. But I do want to. I'm looking forward to getting to the Q&A in just a bit.
Yeah. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate everybody that's still on with us. If you have a question for Hassan about engaging college and young professional volunteers, you should see the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Just please share that in there, and he'll be able to navigate through those questions. So this will be the time for Q&A. Right before we get to that, though, we did want to let you know a lot of questions coming in about Oak Tree Institute and our services, what we do. Really highly encourage you to schedule a call with us to have a consultation session with us about how we can help you and your organization, your masjid, your community center. As I mentioned in the beginning, we're really trying to specialize even in the topics that Hassan just presented. These are very unique to the Muslim community, our realities of our institutions, and we're really trying to specialize in the space of capacity building, if you will, for our institutions. So reach out to us, let us know if you wanted to do an assessment, a survey, a training. We can go over a number of our services that we do across the different levels for boards, for directors and team leads, for volunteers and staff. We have quite a number of offerings that we can support your organization with. With that said, Hazard, I'll give it over to you to navigate through the Q&A.
Sounds good. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, inshallah. All right, Rami, let's to expedite this. Feel free to look at the questions as well. I will start from what we have now, and then walk upward. You can work backward as well. Anything that you catch, inshallah.
Yeah, and we have about 47 people on as well. If you want to ask your question out loud as well, just raise your hand. I'll be able to get you off of mute and have you share your question as well if you want to ask it out loud. If you want to ask it in kind of over text, you could put it into the chat window, or you can type it into the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen.
All right, so I just looking at the questions.
I had a few questions that came in. Hassan, if you want me
Yeah,
just to
go
ask, you
for
want to
it.
start
Go for
there,
it.
or
Go for it.
so actually a question just came in. So Sister Lamise is asking, how do you determine the channels for social media, podcasts, or other ways to reach this target audience?
That's a very good question. Um, interesting. Even companies ask that question to us. That's on the strategy work that we do. I recently, we're working with this is for my 9 to 5 job, if you will. Working with a large university, and they're doing assessment, and so it's not an answer that I want to give. I'll just tell you, okay, here's what the stat says. This is the channels. You need to find a way to survey the audience to get that answer, right? And I want to highly encourage simple stuff like how are you surveying young and college young professionals that are showing up in Ramadan, they're showing up in your Jummah. That's a great place to start, right? Is to send out this, have some sort of survey, have some way of polling them and asking them, where do I reach you, right? Is it on Facebook? Probably not, right? Is it on TikTok? Is it on Instagram? Is it on LinkedIn? And maybe it will vary, where they want to be reached out to, right? What spaces. And so if you're talking about social media channels, I think it's really about finding where they're at, right? And they engage social media differently, depending on what they're interacting with. But that's definitely the channels as far as from a recruitment perspective. And think about I would go just beyond the social media channel. Think about the channels that you have in your community, right? What are the channels that I mentioned? Where are the young people in your community at the moment, right? Think about the spaces they're in, right? And how can you partner with the spaces? And that will go a long way, I think. Rami, feel free to add anything.
Yeah, it's a great point, Mohammed. And obviously, I think the only thing I would add to that is just understanding your own goals as an organization. What are you trying to accomplish, and and thinking about the different means, methods, strengths that you have in terms of like, hey, what's our mission? What's our goal? What are we trying to do? Various when I 100% agree with Hassan on the polling your audience, but the audience is diverse. It's variant. Some people, some people like to read books, and some people like to listen to their books. Right? It depends on who is your community, who's there that you're trying to reach out to, and how are you trying to move the needle with them? Is this I think the question was alluding to, is it a just trying to disseminate content? Is it a conference? Is it a class, a course? I think you got to think about the goal and then think about the audience, and from there try to utilize the different means of reaching that group.
And I do want to clarify and not clarify even just emphasize one thing here. We are very much focused on talking about college and young professional volunteers today. I'm not talking about getting college and young professional attendees. Although if you make a Venn diagram, there is some similarities in between. But I just want to clarify the scope of our discussion today was to very much on getting those folks who want to be your volunteers, right? And of course, if you attract attendees or people who will take your classes or to attend your programs and events, that may result in volunteers as well. But those are two distinctive strategies.
Yeah,
because their mindsets are a little different.
Yeah. I think similar to this next question, it's from an anonymous person. They're asking, how would you pitch? They're currently a young professional and they work in a masjid, they're volunteering in a masjid, or maybe they are working. They wrote the word work. How do you pitch social media strategies that are humorous to promote conferences and conventions for the organization while maintaining Islamic guidelines? So I guess a question on like how to influence how to influence newer strategies for programs and
I get that. You will often find young professional young college students involved in the masjid. They see what the recent TikTokers or influencers are doing, and they want to use the masjid platform, masjid social media to do that, replicate that, right? They feel excited about that. And oftentimes they get shut down by by others who are like, no, this is not a masjid space to do that. I think there's a balance of looking at what latest tactics and strategies on social media works. And I'm not, and I'll say it, I'm not a social media expert. That is not my area of expertise. Organizational psychology and strategy is. But social media is one of the levers, right? And so what are the current strategy and tactics on social media? Is it those 10-second videos? Is it this style of we can follow that, and some are just hype, some will not work for your organization. And as long as we make sure that it follows the Islamic guidelines, and that's something that our masjid as a group need to have a committee around, or people who can look at it and say, okay, this is okay. And really it's a call that the team has to make, right? And the guidelines. And so I would say that be open-minded about the current strategy and tactics. Of course, balance it out with whether or not this is falls within the parameters of a Sharia and so forth. But also, I would say, I think sometimes we get too caught up, and I think this is actually the more important point. We get too caught up on these tactics on social media. And I'm telling you, half of the stuff I mentioned today wasn't really about social media tactics. It was about whether or not we have programs and roles that are attractive, whether or not we are collaborating with youth spaces, whether or not we have a youth-friendly a masculine leader that is publicly youth-friendly. And those are the other way more key important than you putting a very sleek TikTok campaign that may create a buzz, may not result in a volunteer long-term.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair, Hassan. And again, I see there's questions also in the chat window. I'm going to get to those in a second. Sister Samiha asked the question about what does Oak Tree offer to teens or MSA leaders? What advice do you have on leading MSAs? I'll answer that really quickly. We actually have a workshop on how to lead and manage an MSA, Sister Samia. So feel free to reach out to me or the Oak Tree team. We'd love to help out and tell you what we can do to work with MSAs. Another good question though for you that came in from Sister Lamisto Hassan.
Yeah.
She's asking, how do you assess the efficacy of a strategy for fundraising and attracting volunteers? Meaning, like, how are we assessing this work of attracting volunteers? Is it quantity versus quality, number of volunteers and donors, or the value of their contributions?
Yeah, assessment is a very interesting word. You cannot assess until you have a North Star. So, and let me break that down in very simple language. What is it that your masjid is trying to achieve, or your organization is trying to achieve from a very much your strategic plan, North Star, and then your roadmap of these are the targets we want to hit, right? Then you can assess whether or not your approach or is working, or at what level is it working, right? You can also benchmark yourself against other masjids, and that's one of the things that actually at Oak Tree we are looking into. To be able to create a sort of benchmark so that masjids can share the best practice and kind of gauge each other with each other, and that would be a great way to see where am I have some weaknesses. But in assessing whether or not it's working, quantity versus quality, it's really on your goal, and I think it's not this or that. It's not mutually exclusive. I think you could think about, for a certain project, we need more hands, and for a certain initiative we just need 1 or 2 dedicated volunteers, and so it can go both ways for that. And I think once we start to think about our volunteering and our engagement in our masjid and our organization far away from volunteering and more about projects and roles, I think the easier time you'll have to synthesize that.
Yeah, Jazakallah khairan. A lot of good feedback on this benchmarking. We definitely need some kind of benchmark to understand where we should be and assess from there. So Jazakallah khairan. Hassan, a question about, like, where do you start if it's a new masjid or you're just trying to gain the momentum? There's a question about, like, what's the approach to start to attract and develop young adults interested in volunteering?
I would say a short answer is start with getting attendees. So having programs that serves the need of young college and young professionals without necessarily looking at getting volunteers just yet. You need to get some numbers and you should get some people in your organization first, in your spaces. And so think about what is it that will attract them, and we could have a whole discussion of what is that is relevant to these college young professionals, whether it be things that they're interested in. And I'm sure folks here can give a whole list, and I want to make an exhaustive list here. But think about a college individual. What are their interests, right? From the current events, they might have some interest. They have their grad school is their interest, future career is their interest, interview school is their interest. Their personal growth interest. For a young professional, networking is their interest. Getting married is their interest. I mean, and so think about what is it that will attract and serve the need. And I think then we can get to this discussion around volunteers. But I think start with the attendees first.
Okay, so start with programs, gain some momentum there, then try to leverage volunteers from there. It's good answer. Dr. Jazz from the Mecca Center, mashallah, welcome, Dr. Jazz. He said, I'd love to hear your thoughts or suggestions on what specific types of rewards and recognitions are motivators for youngsters that are volunteering.
So
how would you recognize or reward them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our Masjid organizations have done dinners, have done plaques, have done certificates, have done that. But I think we need to go beyond that. And I will tell you something that's probably not an answer you're going to get often. It's about specific praising. This generation of millennials and Gen Zs, as I mentioned, they're already facing a lot of critique in the world. If you can make them feel, you as a leader of the Masjid, the organization, and you take that one-on-one time, that itself is a reward. The one-on-one time that you set up, where you are, acknowledging that the strength that they have, you're listening to the pain that they're going through college or just being early in their career. That will be much more important to them than anything else. So that's one kind of that really personal. You being that murabbi, you being that the person that they acknowledge the strength that they have and give them the security. That's one. Two, and by the way, this is a question that companies are asking as well, right? That how do we what are those total reward packages? And we get that. We have clients that ask that question, even Fortune 500 clients that are reshaping the total reward package when they come to Gen Zs and millennials. Time off may not be the only thing they're looking for. Generation X, and maybe looking for that time off to have work-life balance with it. But millennial might not be looking for that. Gen Z might not be too interested in that, right? And so think about that one-on-one reward. Number two, that's public reward, meaning that recognition of that in social media and so forth, showcasing them, it's something that is important to them. And thirdly, those non-tangible rewards. Those opportunities that you're investing and you're paying for, there's something in the development, a course they want to take, a training they want to take, you sponsoring their summer semester. There's so many things you can leverage that are just beyond just a flag or a dinner and so forth. If there is a funding, of course, this can get expensive. Where that in inexpensive ways, the one-on-one conversations. Hope that answers some of the questions.
That was good. No, it's good. I think this is the last question I have, and I think it's from Dr. Muhammad. So I think Dr. Muhammad, so mashallah, welcome from Mass Dallas. He wants to ask, how do you move this population from receiving to giving? I guess there's this interest to receive, but how do you make this shift to gives? And I think probably, and I know a little bit about Mass Dallas, they have a lot of young professionals that show up to programs, but how do you help them make that shift to volunteering, serving?
Yeah. I mean, let's think about the generation too, right? This generation is living with their parents way past, in the late 20s. And then they blame the economy, and again, I'm saying this in a very, very respectful way. And just the circumstance of what things are at, right? And so even parents ask the same question, right? There's a lot of expectation of things that the world should do for me, right? And I shouldn't do. That's one way to look at them. and feel like these lazy individuals and takers and consumers, right? But I think there's another way to look at them as well. Another way to look at them is that they are looking for meaning, impact, and they're looking for things that align. They will volunteer, and studies across the board shows that they're more willing to volunteer 70% of the time, more than a donation. And that, in a matter of fact, in the last several years of relief causes, more millennials paid for relief than baby boomers. When it came to relief causes around the world, more millennials, from percentage wise, they paid and they were investing in that. So the point is, I think, is not to look at them, if we look at them from a lens of like, they're just like lazy and takers and consumers. If we start to look at them more of, okay, we haven't found what really interests them. Let me ask them. And we approach them from that space of like, we want to find out what does motivate you. You're not motivated. No, what does motivate you, right? And you will find that there are. I mean, these young people, they are showcasing for a company that doesn't even pay them. Right? They're so motivated by a company's cause that they're going and promoting the company's cause, making a video on for it, and they don't even get paid as an ambassador. Right? What is causing them to do that? Right? So I think we haven't tapped into that power of this customer that I feel is the most important customer for our organization.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair, Hassan. Jazakallah khair, everybody. We have just a number of questions that came in, and I think we alluded to a lot of them, but apologies that we couldn't get to all of them. It's 10:30 Eastern, and we want to be very mindful of everybody's time. Please reach out to us, though, at oaktreeinstitute.org. Reach out to, I know Zawad's been sharing a lot of information about how to get in contact with us and our organization, our team. Please reach out to us if you want to have a session, a consultation session with myself or Hassan or anybody else from our team. Again, we're here to serve the mission of serving our community. So anything we can do to help you all as leaders is why we're here. I also want to give as we kind of close a thank you for Muslim American Society National for partnering. They're really dedicated to the work of developing youth across the country, and it's an important part of their mission statement. And we appreciate them kind of collaborating with us on this webinar. And again, Jazakallah khair to all of you as attendees. May Allah reward you and bless you all. Continue to elevate you and your community work and your organizations. We are in a very unique. I always tell our community leaders this. I say this at a lot of our end of our trainings. We're in a very unique space here in the U.S. We get to lead our own communities, our own Islamic institutions, and it's a huge blessing from Allah Azza wa Jalla, and hopefully we get rewarded from that. But there's a lot of challenges, and I think one of the things that we try to do at Oak Tree is kind of build this community where we all people from across the country can come together to talk about some of these important topics like managing the next generation of volunteers. So we appreciate your time. We appreciate your efforts. Keep up the great work. We're here to help and support as best as we can. And may Allah reward you all. Hassan, any last thoughts to share as we close?
No, Jazakumullah khair for everyone here that attended, your concern and your care. And I hope, inshallah, that Allah blesses you and all the work you've done in pulling college and professionals, inshallah. They are those zuriyah, the progenies and generations to come, inshallah, that are benefiting from your work, from your contribution, from your focus, from your investment in the young people, that you will see it in your scale, in your hasanat, inshallah. Keep us in your dua. And we are your partner. We are, we're here. If you, whatever level, it's not just about our trainings or our consulting services. If you want to chat with us, let's set up a time to chat. And we and Rami and I and others here at Oak Tree, we talk about this, that we're so blessed that Allah has put us in this position, and we don't take this lightly, that, organizations around the country and now, other places as well, that reach out to us and with our conversation, they're making shifts in their organizations. And Allah puts us in place, and we take that very, very seriously. And we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow all of us sincerity and barakah in all that we do. Jazakumullah khair.
Barakallahu feekum. Jazakallah khair, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.